Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Employee points to paint aisle and chaos ensues. Lady comes into our store, a big hardware store in the UK, and as you come in, we have a showing area of garden furniture. This is in front of you and to your right. To the left, we have a customer service desk, and directly opposite are paint aisles. And a lot more beyond that, but unneeded for this story. You actually need to come into the store, go towards the paint aisles, then turn around to get to the desk. And we always have a manager, M, close-ish, as when stuff needs refunding, it needs a second authorization. Customer, C, comes through our doors at enough pace to hit the automatic gates, instantly goes to our customer service desk. Me, you all right? Is there anything I can help you with? C, where's your paint? Me, pardon? Genuine confusion, you can't miss the paint. C, slower and louder, where is your paint? Me, quizzical expression, it's behind you. Points over her shoulder. C, what do you think you're doing? Me, showing you the paint? Steps out behind desk and moves behind her so she turns around. C, you should never point. It's rude. Me, I do apologize, madam. Just your question caught me a little off guard, and I forgot my manners for a second. C, madam, do I look like a madam? Manager approaches, but doesn't announce she's the manager. And at this point, I realized it was someone just looking to cause trouble, so I start speaking in a really saccharine voice to her and started getting sarcastic. Me, yes, you look female. I apologize if I spoke your wrong pronoun. What would you like me to call you instead? C, barely hidden rage. I want a manager. Me, okay, a manager, the paint's behind you. Is there any other way I can help you today, a manager? M, Karen. C, you uppity little crap. She reaches over the desk. M, do not assault our staff. I will have to call security. S, seeing you having made that move. C, he's done nothing but be rude and unhelpful in helping me find the paint. M, you're looking for paint? C, finally, someone with intelligence. Yes. M, any particular paint in mind? C, no, just wanting to browse. M, points. Security comes over. C, why does everyone keep pointing? S, what appears to be the problem? C, I just want the paint aisle. S, behind you. M, please, S, just escort her out. She attempted to assault OP and will not take a simple answer. M has her head in her hands at this point. C, excuse me, I am a paying customer. S, not anymore. Please vacate the premises or I will escort you out. If I have to do that, you'll be banned. As they leave, I burst out laughing and my manager slaps me around the back of the head. I did get called in HR for antagonizing an obviously distressed customer. However, due to the idiocy of everything, nothing came of it. I do have one other good story, quite a lot shorter and a lot stupider, but it was with a really nice customer who was just embarrassed at the end, so I begrudge saying that one in case they see it. This wasn't just a Karen, it was a full-on theatrical performance, from screeching about being called madam to flipping out over being pointed at, like it's some kind of ancient insult. It's giving Shakespearean rage with zero self-awareness. And our second story. He ignored my note, so I had his illegal truck towed. When I moved into my very first apartment, it felt like everything I'd been hoping for. Independence, a decent neighborhood, and a safe off-street parking lot for my old beater car. The building itself wasn't flashy, but it was well-kept and quiet, and for a while I had no complaints. Then these two newcomers showed up, a guy and his friend, who acted like they owned the entire complex. Almost overnight, my pleasant living situation turned into a series of headaches and confrontations I never expected to experience. I first met the guy when he was lugging grocery crates up the building's back stairs. He worked at some kind of produce place, and from what I could tell, he didn't own a personal car. Instead, he'd occasionally have friends drop him off or he'd hitch rides. At first, he seemed harmless enough, just a brash, somewhat loud personality. Then I noticed he had a parking spot next to mine in the shared lot. In many apartment complexes, each unit gets a specific parking spot or two, and the rules are usually pretty strict about what kind of vehicles are allowed. This was definitely the case in my city. There was a municipal bylaw that prohibited commercial trucks or oversized vehicles from being parked overnight in a residential lot. If you had to bring home a box truck or a large commercial vehicle, you were required to park it on the street or in designated commercial zones if the street had restrictions. I was aware of this law in a casual sense, but it wasn't relevant to me. My own car was a small, old sedan beaten up from years of use, so the only thing I worried about was making sure I had enough room to pull in and out of my spot. Initially, the guy would let his visitors use his space whenever they came by. That didn't bother me at all. I didn't care who parked next to me as long as they stayed within the lines and didn't ding my door. But after a few weeks, I started to notice this huge cube van, like a 17-foot commercial vehicle you might rent from U-Haul, occupying the spot beside mine. Sometimes the truck's driver would park at an angle or too far over the painted line, making it nearly impossible for me to maneuver my sedan in or out without risking scraping my car. And on the days when the space was tight, I'd have to wedge myself in at an odd angle or even climb in through the passenger side because the truck's bulk took up every bit of lateral room. At first, I tried to handle it in the most civil manner possible. I wrote a note explaining the issue, placing it on his windshield. I was polite in my wording. I noted that city bylaws actually prohibit large commercial vehicles from parking overnight in residential lots, and I asked if he could be more mindful of how tight the space was for me. I even suggested that he could legally park on the nearby side street. I signed the note with a simple "thank you" and my apartment number, hoping he'd come speak to me if he had concerns. Instead of taking the hint, he ignored the note entirely. Every time I came home, the van was still there, practically crowding my sedan into the corner of the parking spot. Over the next couple weeks, I ended up collecting more than a few scratches along my car's side. Now, my car was a total junker. I wasn't heartbroken over some fresh scrapes, but it was just the principle of the thing that got under my skin. The truck was illegal to park there to begin with, and courtesy demanded that if someone's vehicle is causing major problems for others, you address it. Finally, I'd had enough. My attempts at diplomacy had gone nowhere, and I was sick of returning from work only to cringe at the sight of that enormous van jammed in next to me. So I called my city's parking enforcement division to lodge a complaint. I explained the situation, that there was a bylaw against parking commercial vehicles in a residential building's private lot, and asked if they could ticket it or even have it towed. It didn't take long for a tow truck and a city bylaw officer to show up. The driver had barely started hooking up the van when the owner came storming out of the building, livid. He went off about how he'd done nothing wrong and how we were all out to get him. The bylaw officer tried explaining that this was a city rule, not a personal vendetta, but that just made him more furious. To my dismay, the guy then turned his anger on me. He hurled insults, calling me a baby for complaining and a R word for letting the cops handle it. I told him he was out of line, and the tow truck operator stepped in, telling him to calm down or risk further trouble. Instead, the guy took a wild swing in my direction. Luckily, he missed, but that was enough for the tow driver to phone the police. Within minutes, officers were on the scene, and they arrested the neighbor for disorderly conduct. It turned into quite the spectacle for the other residents who were watching from their windows. And if that wasn't enough, I brought the incident to the building superintendent's attention. I emphasized how this individual was causing distress and had even attempted physical violence. With all the complaints and a police report now on file, the super decided to evict him. Ultimately, that single afternoon ended up costing my neighbor a hefty tow and ticket bill, close to $300, and the loss of his apartment. The entire scenario was unpleasant, but it was also a relief to know that I wouldn't have to fight for space in my own parking spot anymore. Once he and his friend were gone, the building returned to normal, quieter, calmer, and easier to navigate in the lot. Looking back, I'm glad I tried the polite approach first, leaving that note on his truck. If he had simply acknowledged it and made an effort to comply with the rules, the whole mess could have been avoided. But since he chose to ignore common courtesy and the city bylaws and ultimately react with aggression, it was only a matter of time before he faced the consequences. Sometimes you do everything you can to avoid conflict, but if the other person refuses to cooperate, enforcing the rules becomes the only way to protect your rights and property. ROP gave this guy every opportunity to be a decent human being, but nope, buddy with the cube van just had to park illegally and make life miserable, all while acting like he owned the lot. And our last story. Karen calls 911 on me for being naked in my own house. I'm not even sure where to start. Recently, my girlfriend and I completed building a 2-story home in a quiet, nice suburb. Our neighbor's house was built slightly earlier, just about 10 feet away from ours. When designing our house, we decided to put a large bathroom with a jacuzzi and a small window on the second floor to let in natural light. There shouldn't have been any issues since there was just a solid wall on our neighbor's side, no windows, no doors. We thought there'd be zero discomfort or invasion of privacy. But last week, something completely absurd happened. My girlfriend accidentally noticed movement outside our small bathroom window. At first, I thought she was mistaken. It's a solid wall. But the next day, we both confirmed someone had drilled a small hole directly through our neighbor's wall facing our window. That's when things got really insane. The next morning, I step out of the house and immediately our neighbor, let's call her Karen, because this name fits her perfectly, comes storming out of her yard, screaming hysterically, followed closely by 2 police officers. She's holding her phone and yells, "That's him! Arrest him immediately!" The police officers approach and Karen shows them a video clearly showing the inside of our bathroom. She shouts that her son, who's underage by the way, became a victim of indecent behavior after seeing my girlfriend taking a bath. I stare at the cops stare at Karen. An awkward silence follows until one of the officers finally asks, "Ma'am, did you just admit your son deliberately drilled a hole in your wall to spy on your neighbors, and you recorded it on video?" Karen practically explodes in rage, "But they were behaving indecently. He's a child. He's traumatized." By this time, even the police officers were losing patience. They called Karen's son outside, and he admitted he drilled the hole because he really wanted to check out the chick in the jacuzzi. Karen's eyes almost popped out of her head. Apparently, she'd known about this hole for several days, but instead of closing it or disciplining her son, she decided to record us, hoping to catch us red-handed. The officers explained to Karen that she and her son were the ones who had broken the law, peeping, unlawful recording of private life, and invasion of privacy. Karen started panicking, screaming we had set her up, blaming us for everything. It didn't help. My girlfriend and I agreed to officially file a complaint. A detective came by a few days later. He carefully examined our window, the hole in the neighbor's wall, took photos, and recorded our statements. A few days later, we learned Karen's son received a citation for invasion of privacy, and Karen herself was summoned to court for illegally recording and storing a private video without consent. Now, Karen keeps bombarding us with messages claiming we ruined her life. She even spreads gossip among neighbors saying we deliberately placed our jacuzzi opposite their wall to provoke her son. Fortunately, the neighbors are reasonable people and support us, agreeing that Karen's behavior is absolutely insane. Honestly, I still can't wrap my head around this woman's logic. How is it our fault her son turned out to be a creep, and instead of parenting him, she made everything worse? Now we're just waiting for the court date, and for the first time since living here, I'm genuinely questioning whether building next door to Karen was a huge mistake. One of the dumbest shots in the leg and trying to make it look like it was the author's fault? Classic. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.